And you're like, I know, I hear about it all the time. Yeah.
I just thinking about other people having to go through this just makes me sick to my stomach.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's getting a little easier, like during the day, it's a little easier. Anyway, I've decided it sounds a lot like pregnancy, but for years. Yeah. That's kind of the issue.
All right, so I want to welcome you guys all for coming. We're so happy you could come, and we're so blessed to have Kristin Durkee speaking here today. In the month of December, too, about making memories with our kids. I feel like that couldn't be any more fitting, and I've just been really looking forward to this. So I feel like she hardly needs an introduction, especially after last if you watched the last month's with Nikita, talked so much about her, and I feel like we learned a lot about just you in general. And I can say you're so near and dear to my heart, and the way I'd say I could best describe you as just reformed and refined with a regenerated heart, completely sold out for Christ, and you're just such a solid prayer warrior, and I just love that so much about you. So here's a little bio on Kristin. She is a recovering homeschool mom that is abundantly blessed with 3 grown children, which are all responsible citizens. We appreciate. She has 3 daughters-in-laws and now 9 grandchildren, right? Yeah, as of this week, right? So, and she has quite the hat collection, as notable as she's aware of many over the years, including but not limited to being the wife and helper of Alan. She's a mom as well, a home educator, a traveler, meter of people, wedding stylist, farmhand, and combine operator. She frequently can be found making memories by feeding snacks to, starting bonfires for, and exploring adventures with her grandchildren. She would like to clone herself so that she could spend even more time with them, but her dad once said that God broke the mold after creating her, so she isn't holding out much hope for that. So we are so grateful to have you here, and just can't wait to hear what you have to say for us. So,
thank you. That was such a generous introduction. Okay, how is this? Oh, I forgot my notes. They're in large print. So it looks like I have a lot more to say than I actually do. But I do have a lot to say, actually. So I discovered about this topic, and you may have to cut me off. It's such an honor to be here. It's a privilege to get to talk to all you ladies. I feel like I've been kind of in your shoes in the past, and so I recognize how valuable it is to have somebody that has, come out on the other side successfully. Before I begin, I'd like to say I really think that some of you are probably more qualified to give this talk than I am. So I just want to give that as a qualifier. I hope that today what we share and talk about will be beneficial to you. And I really look forward to at the end, we will have some discussion questions that maybe we can get to chatting. And I really look forward to gleaning ideas from you guys during the discussion time. Also, before I forget, I brought along some books. You'll probably be able to tell from one of the stories I'm going to share with you today that I do love dirt. It's true. So this book is really cute. It's I Love Dirt, 52 Activities to Help You and Your Kids Discover the Wonders of Nature. You're going to hear me tell some stories today, and I might end up sounding like a lot better person than I actually am, and I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. I have used a lot of resources over the years to help me along this journey, and you probably have even better ones. I don't know. I just brought some along that might give you some ideas. So some of these are specific resources that I might pull out of that are just activity ideas. Some of these are books that like novels that we have either adapted to tell as a story out loud. My husband has done that with this story. Some of these are activities that we might use in the car. Stefan is here, and so now he knows that this is going to be the next car book, the visual dictionary. So it's kind of a fun activity for the car. A book of poems. This book right here is probably my favorite, actually, of all of these. You can tell. The cover's ripped off. And it is the Incredible Indoor Games book. So this just, all these things, they just, you know what they do? They just get the wheels turning. And we'll talk more about maybe some of these. But you can look through these if you would like to afterwards. They've just been really useful resources for me. So I'm going to start out with telling a joke because this talk is entitled Being Intentional Making Memories. And my dad was so fun. He would always have these really cheesy jokes to tell. So I really want to share this one with you. So you have heard this story maybe about a local Indian tribe, Native American tribe, I should say. And one of the young Native American boys went in to visit his great-grandfather because he had a really burning curiosity about something. His mom was about to have a baby, and he was wondering, he said, great-great-grandfather, you are the wisest person in our village, and so I wanted to ask you, why is it that everyone in our village has a name that has to do with creation? And the great-great-grandfather said, well, that is a good observation. And he said, I'll tell you, we have a system, wise people that we are. And so every time that a baby is born, the midwife walks out, opens up the flap on the teepee and looks outside, and whatever it is that she sees first, that is what we name the child. And the little boy's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so the grandfather puts his arm on the little boy and says, why do you ask, pooping dog? Sorry, it's so bad, but it's really funny. So we say it all the time. My dad was so silly. Anyway, I just thought you guys had to hear that one. That was a necessity. Okay, so I also want to tell you another story, and this is going to sound familiar to Stefan. Late this summer, 3 of my grandchildren and I went to Shug's Tiny Town in Fort Madison, and it was a birthday trip that for the 2 that were having their second birthdays. But our 9-year-old grandson offered to go along to help with the babies, as we call them. We've been referring to them as such for so long, and we just kind of can't get out of the habit. So, and I've been recovering from illness this year, and my energy level's not been what it used to be. So I really jumped at the chance to have a helper. And we arrived in Fort Madison just as it seemed, or at Shug's, just as it seemed everybody else was leaving the store. And so we had the entire place to ourselves. We took over the tiny town, doing grocery shopping, caring for puppies at the vet clinic, and doctoring one another. And as I inevitably began to wear out, we discovered the salon, where I was promptly asked by the 9-year-old to sit right here and make myself comfortable. Would I like my nails done? What color? I was like, oh, well, yes, I would, thank you. And suddenly there was a 2-year-old painting my nails while another brushed my hair on the other side. I was offered a magazine and a beverage and brought a crown even to put upon my head. So it was just in the nick of time for a tired Grammy. What happy memories we made. If you haven't time to respond to a tug at your pants leg, your schedule is too crowded. Robert Brault. And Jesus said, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Mark 10:14. Making memories is about sharing experiences with our children for the purpose of delighting in one another and building relationship. So before we get into what that looks like, let's just take a moment and think about the question, why? And as far as this relates to home education, since your group is specifically home educators, I'd like to begin with posing a question. What is your purpose in homeschooling? Okay, so while you're pondering that, I'll introduce myself just a little bit more by giving a little bit of background, because it's kind of fun to hear how people got started homeschooling, I think. And it really began when our children were toddlers and preschoolers, but we just didn't realize all the things that we were teaching them when we asked them to hand us the purple crayon and things like that. That was really the infancy of our home education. And I grew up in a home with a PhD for a father and a heritage of influential community members in which education was appreciated and highly valued. So it was important to me. Education was important to me and is important to me. Our children were about 4, 3, and 1 when we had a big change that took place in our family. And that was when the Holy Spirit really grasped a hold of my heart and turned a lot of what was head knowledge about Jesus. I knew he died on the cross. I knew all the Bible stories. I went to church growing up. My parents were wonderful. They took me. Anyway, God turned that into a heart of gratitude for the realization of what Jesus really did on the cross for me. And sorry about that. A classically good Midwesterner who came to the realization she was deep down a sinner who could never and would never be good enough to stand before God. So it was a moment that has changed my life on earth and has changed the course of my eternity. And I could not have been more full of praise or more excited to share my new discovery and, more importantly, to teach it to my babies. Next question for you. Has God breathed new life into you too? If he has, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're excited. And if you're not sure, feel free to come up and talk to me about it afterwards. We can chat. So as a new Christian, one who'd been raised in the church but had experiences in the public schools and academia, which I felt like had created some hindrances for me spiritually, and my husband felt similarly. We felt God impressing upon us that discipleship in our home was going to be the key that would turn the lock on our kids' hearts for the Lord. So while God is the one who is sovereign over our children's hearts, he's definitely given us parents a blessing and responsibility of discipling them and training them to our very best ability. And we began to notice the school years were no longer out there beyond the horizon, but they were starting to approach at like 60 miles an hour from the other direction. And as the questions all started coming in, such as, would you like to enroll your child in the preschool program? And that was the first one. Well, what do you think? Are you going to drive your kids to school? Are you going to put them on the bus? And what do you think? Are you considering private school? Most people assumed, and I think so did we at that point, that we would send our kids to school. But we did think and pray about those decisions, and through the work of the Holy Spirit, as he does, orchestrates hearts of friends and community, we were introduced to a couple in our county, like the whole county. This is way back when, okay? So, who were considering this fairly new, crazy idea of homeschooling. We had never heard of such a thing. And our first response was what maybe yours might have been. It was a natural one. Oh man, you would have to be crazy to do that. But we couldn't shake it. So we diligently went to our library. You couldn't do a Google search or listen to a podcast about it back then. And we found a book about the subject. You remember books, right? Yeah. Okay, so there was a lawyer, also homeschool father, who had put the data together for us. And we realized, wow, we've been kind of teaching these kids these things all along. I mean, they know how to tie their shoes, they know their colors, they know how to write their names in that cute Tim Burton style creepy penmanship. And they know how to get dressed in the morning, take their dishes over to the sink after meals. These are all things that we've been teaching them. They even know how to sort their clothes according to color, just because we would make it into a game and out of our family chores. And so you probably do many of these things as well, especially if you only have babies, toddlers, and preschoolers thus far in your home. And that means you're home educating. So congratulations. I know a lot of you have children who are older too, but just as an encouragement to anybody who might be listening who is still in the preschool stage. But how does that translate into teaching algebra, right? So we had this revelation after reading through that book by Christopher Klicka that we might be able to continue doing and build upon what we'd been doing in the preschool years without totally screwing up our kids. It made logical sense to us that home-educated kids become successful entrepreneurs, they have good college entrance exams comparatively, and they're much better communicators, especially when it comes to dealing with people across all age groups than their public school counterparts. It was kind of mind-blowing to us at the time. We just didn't know any differently. But it's logical once you examine the evidence. So for our family, it was indeed in part, as it is in whole for some homeschool families, due to a desire to give our children the best in academics that we were able to for our area, knowing that we cared the most about their academic education and future than anyone else ever could. But our primary driver was to train and educate our children in the knowledge of the Lord to the best of our ability. So I have a very high level of respect for Christian parents of public school children. But for us, we just knew that how much time we, being products of the public school ourselves, had not spent with our parents, but that had been primarily under the influence of outside the home and church. You've heard the common saying, more is caught than taught, and that children spell love, T-I-M-E. And from scripture, about talking about the law of the Lord when you walk by the way. And we did not and we do not criticize other families for different decisions, as God is so gracious and he works in so many ways. But for us, the way was being paved clearly for our family to spend time with our kids by teaching them at home. So a compilation of us being newer Christians, our relative youth and pretty much indifference to what anyone thought, and our God-given personalities to forge new paths or try new things, we thought, let's give this a shot. A couple homeschool conferences later, our path seemed to be set. One such conference, my college professor dad attended with me, and afterwards on our way home, as we were talking pretty much nonstop about all the seminars and breakout sessions, and the gymnasium, this was amazing to me, the gymnasium full of curriculum, just wow, that just was such an encouragement to me to see all that. We looked through all that wide-eyed, and he turned to me and said, you have to do this. And so that pretty much nailed it. We were truly on our way after that. And we didn't know exactly where we were going or how we were going to arrive, but we had total confidence that we were being steered in the right direction. So that was the view at the beginning of our journey into home education. And the scenery out your window might look a little bit different, but here you are on the journey too. And probably you've been thinking now a little bit about your own purpose in home education. Could it be in part similar to ours? Perhaps you too want to inculcate your values and love of the Lord as we did, and you know that discipleship takes time. So my talk today is about making memories and being intentional to do that. As we know, it is hard because the days just fly by, and there's so much to fit in. But what's neat about having your children in the home with you is that you have many opportunities to connect. We are such deeply relational beings, and shared experiences create that connection. So you guys have probably heard about the when you ride a roller coaster with someone, that it creates this like bond between you, this thrilling experience. I just think it's amazing how God has created us with this capacity to connect, and which comes from so deep within his design of ourselves and our hormones. I had to actually alter this talk just a little bit after my daughter was on the previously homeschooled panel at your last meeting. For I can tell you as a parent whose truly greatest joy is that her children are now walking in truth, that the formative years were not wasted by God. He wastes nothing. He was working in our children's school years through our discipline, teaching them good habits and respect, and through play, through all the hours spent on the floor, with the book, out in the yard, chasing a ball. But I believe primarily because we had a good relationship and a good foundation with our children, that our discipline was generally received in love, even when we didn't do a perfect job of it, and I absolutely assure you that we did not. Our children probably have stories to tell. And when our children had questions or failed and they were miserable or hurting over the inevitable troubles and trials in life, we had a relationship established in which we had earned the right to encourage them, or sometimes even maybe practically force them to talk about things they might not have even known that they needed to talk about, or maybe to discipline them, or just to come alongside them and be there. We had shared memories and experiences to draw upon during some of their most difficult times. When push came to shove, we had an influence. We'd cultivated a seedbed of love and of truth, and we'd built that close bond during that time spent making those wonderful memories during our wonderful homeschool years. I would never trade those years for anything. I often tell this to homeschool moms, so just hang in there. For me, homeschooling has been honestly part survival. I'm sure you're in that stage. We were just talking out in the hall. It's a little bit of survival, but it's so fun. And you're learning about each of your children. You're learning about yourself. For me, it was also just fun playtime. And of course, I was learning many things along the way that I was trying to teach to my children that I don't think that I probably learned all that well the first time around. And in every part, it was knowing God. So you have to drink deeply from the wellspring of life to be filled up enough for each day as a homeschool mom. It's just crucial. But definitely looking back, I know there were days that I wish I could have put my kids on the bus as it was going by. Give up those troubled portions of our days to pursue work or further education myself. But especially now looking back, I know being a homeschool mom was the best use of my time. Dr. Wes Stafford, in his book, Too Small to Ignore, says children are too important and too intensely loved by God to be left behind or left to chance. Today they may snuggle into your lap if you let them, but tomorrow you may not have access to them in the corridors of power that they might occupy. Now is the time. The dictionary defines intention as a thing intended, an aim or plan. And certainly often we do things unintentionally, and many great things come our way when we are open to being flexible. Work is messy. Have you seen a house being built? Ministry is messy, right, Olivia? Homeschooling and parenting is messy. Sometimes we're on our way to do something important and we see someone hurt on the side of the road of life, and we must stop and take the time to envelop them with kindness and care. And in that way, we are also making some of the best memories. But we may not be able to control the weather, but we can determine an attitude to live with an aim in mind, to have an eyeball-to-eyeball relationship with our children, to have fun, to educate them, and to pour into them spiritually and have opportunities for discovery. So I hope that this will be an encouragement to you, and just to bring some awareness and think a little bit about your own mindset when it comes to making memories and having fun with your kids. In Hebrews chapter 10, we are told, let us not give up meeting together or not staying away from worship meetings or gatherings of believers, but instead show up and encourage one another. Also, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, let us draw near to God. Let us be concerned about one another in order to promote love and good works, encouraging each other. These verses speak to our theme of intentional relationship. Meeting together, encouraging one another, drawing near, being concerned about one another, promoting love and good works. A scripture you are no doubt familiar with is from Deuteronomy 6. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Relationships and memories are built over time through repetition and consistency. So think about now like memorization of times tables or scriptures, or if you took anatomy and physiology, if you were a nurse, or in the medical field, the memory work involved there just almost excruciating at times. Remember learning the finger placements for notes on an instrument? I played flute and piano, and in recent years I've kind of attempted to learn the dulcimer, which is so different. And you guys probably recall the early years of like keyboarding or texting on your phone too. And I bet if you're any good at it, and I'm sure you are, the texting part, we've all got that down now, it's because you know where the keys are. You use them so frequently that you remember, exactly where to put them. It's second nature. And if you haven't kept in practice, like speaking a language or playing an instrument, you can attest, like I can, that your lack of repetition has affected your memory and your abilities. Repetition is so important to our memories. So in addition to teaching and talking and writing and displaying the Lord's commands, we can also see an example for us in Scripture about how to remember in other significant ways. There are rituals and holy days. The Lord often called the Israelites to remember by consistently repeating or doing something significant. For example, think of when they crossed the Jordan into the promised land. Afterwards, each of the tribes placed a stone and this stack of rocks. It stood for something great that God had done. It's so good that God recognizes that we have short memories and we have a sinful nature and we're prone to forget and wander away. And we do this in our families too. We forget, and it's wonderful that He sets the example for us in how that these things need to be repeated. So He says for us to meet together often to remember Christ's sacrifice and to worship, to draw near to God together. Of course, we do that as a church body on Sundays. Similarly, these same concepts hold true in the relationships within our individual families. Families that play together stay together, but we also like to add that families that pray together stay together. Both are necessary components. If my desire is to have a positive and close relationship with my children, then I will have an attitude of intentionality to plan and to spontaneously be open to significant moments of togetherness, playing and praying. And I will repeat those, so the writing of love will just get etched deeply into their hearts. So the other 51 weeks is the title of the next portion of my talk. Have you guys ever played with Legos on the beach before? Okay. Have you taken a ferry to visit a wartime fort? Or had a dolphin swim up to you while in the water? Yes. Or have you lost your keys in the waves? No. Well, we have. On our first family trip to the Atlantic. So often the first thing that comes to mind when we think of great memories might be family vacations. And then that was actually what someone just mentioned to me right before I came up here to talk. They are really precious. A concentrated dose of that time together, taking a break or sharing an experience, a new place or familiar, restful or fun place can be just so beneficial and special. But there are 51 more weeks in the year. And there are those who cannot afford vacation getaways. So often when you're a relatively younger adult, you may not be able to afford either the time or the finances for vacations, and that's okay. My parents very graciously involved us in some trips, but my husband often had to stay home, actually, and take care of the livestock most times. So we only had about 4 vacations that he was able to attend with us when our children were living at home. He was able to go to Branson with us once, to Disney in Florida with us, to a Minnesota cabin near the start of the Mississippi. And then one year my parents had a timeshare that they let us borrow so we could take our family on that trip to coastal South Carolina, where Nikita had a dolphin swim up to her while she was out in the water. That was really special. Either way, life is not a vacation. So what about those other 51 weeks of the year? We don't want to waste them. The Bible tells us that we're prone to wasting our days, and we know how easy it is to waste them. So we have to be intentional. But we know what they say about what the road to hell is paved with, right? So how do we make those good intentions into reality? Okay, so let's get real. In Kara Jacobs' book, The Power of a Playing Parent, which is a great resource about bonding with your children through play, she mentions 7 preventers to fulfilling our good intentions. Kara is a teacher and author friend of mine who grew up actually in this area, but she now lives in Colorado. In her book, she quotes Tim Kimmel, and he says, "We have a love affair with haste." And she states, according to Karen Purvis, author of The Connected Child, many families live at breakneck speed. They hurry to work, to daycare, to civic meetings, and to social engagements. They ferry the kids from scouts to soccer to piano lessons to school and back again. The parent becomes a chauffeur with a checkbook, someone who waves goodbye in the morning and barely says hello again at night. Even a stay-at-home parent can become consumed with busyness and groups, which can interfere with play and memory-making time connecting with our children. This is what she calls the preventer of being too busy. Other barriers to playing that she mentions and making precious memories are too messy, too boring, too tired, too self-conscious, too task-oriented, and too distracted. Oh man, doesn't that hit home? Woo! Throughout her insightful practical book, she surmises there are both attitude solutions and practical solutions to each of our preventers. For instance, she suggests when you are too tired, as you often are, play hair salon or take turns giving foot massages, color at the table, or get everybody together and go outside and paint a picture together. It's so relaxing. You could even play house and you sit down and direct the household. Cuddle up and read inside, outside, and upside down, as Kara says. Play a game of putting items in a jar and saying what you're thankful for. It's as simple as that. Have the children read to you instead of you reading to them. Play music and light candles while the children have a bubble bath, and then follow up with your own. Remember what I told you about my trip to Shugs, where I was the one who was the receiver of all the good things? Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Children will not remember you for the material things that you provided, but for the feeling that you cherished them. And that is a quote by Richard L. Evans. So another purposeful activity that we did in the summer, it was actually this summer too. Shugs was late this summer, or early fall. But another purposeful activity that we did this summer was on a very, very hot day. It was to invite everyone over for creek stomping. So the cool water of the creek is so refreshing in July. It's about the only time of the year that you can actually put your feet in there without dying, because it's so cold the rest of the year. It's a spring-fed creek. When my kids were little, we often took trips to the creek to play, so I've tried to continue this as a tradition with my grandchildren. And what we say is, we are going on an adventure. So when it's just them and myself, we pack a backpack or two with the necessary supplies, such as walkie-talkies, snacks, water, and flashlights, in case we need to peek into any crevices or old buildings. Some of them are graduating now to bringing along pocket knives. But the one thing that we never forget to pack is our imagination and our adventure attitudes. So we go in all seasons, walking through the woods. The kids always get dirty, and so do I. In fact, on our July creek stomping day, we invited all the parents to come, and they got dirty too. It was a really great day. I planned a picnic, and being a grandparent now, I have a little bit more time to prepare a few things. So I did something kind of fun with the fruit cup. And I gathered all this fruit, like all these grapes and bananas and blueberries and things, and I put half a banana in the bottom of each cup, or in each cup, so that the stem portion was sticking out, and cut a little, you've probably seen this before, cut a little slice in the stem, put a blueberry inside of that, and drew with a Sharpie marker a little eyeball, so it looked like a dolphin, kind of coming up out. It was so cute, and the kids just thought it was the best thing. It was a little difficult, but everybody helped carry the baskets and platters of food and old sheets and blankets to lie on, and a few chairs that we brought, and we had a wonderful long lunch. And we just played in the creek, and we built a dam and talked. And somehow I got the dirtiest later, having involved myself in a game of playing war with the older boys, where we each had our own bases in the creek, and we had mud tanks, shooting mud ammunition at each of our other bases. And I only had a sister growing up, so some of these games are new to me, and to be honest, wouldn't be my first choice. But I love spending time with them, and I would never trade our playtime for anything. I want my grandchildren to all know that I'm somebody who will get down on their level, look into their eyes, and connect. Also, may I say that playing mud tank war in the creek is a wonderful way to learn to solve conflicts. During playtime, conflicts will come up, and if you're there to help redirect, or you can assist with an apology and bring about resolutions, their time together playing will produce some beautiful character as well. So hopefully the wheels might be turning now, and you might be thinking about your own childhood or fun things that you've been doing with your kids. So what are some things you remember or value from your childhood? For me, I remember spending hours and hours on the back of a horse. Even falling asleep, I would lay back, and on a warm sunny day, I would just get tired out there, and we had a horse that was just like a babysitter, and I could just lean back and I would just fall asleep. Sometimes I would fall off, but they didn't care. I remember knocking at my grandma's door. She invited me in to talk and snack, always had a snack, and I would sit at her feet, and she would sit in her glider, and she would just tickle my arm like this, for sometimes like an hour, while we just talked. And she was an elderly woman with osteoporosis, so she wasn't the type of grandparent who would go out and play, but I have very good memories with her doing less active play and just being present and engaged with me. And I remember getting in our car to go visiting. We're going visiting. My mom was just so thoughtful and kind, and with the elderly in our community, and she was an only child born to older parents, which was pretty rare actually for her generation. So when I was young, we of course did not have the internet, and so we actually had to leave our houses to engage with people and connect. So we would go to visit many of our elderly neighbors and relatives, and that's how I learned, even as a young child, to love and value and appreciate and look forward to seeing these folks. They were so sweet to us. And if you think that you're doing them some kind of a favor by showing up at their house, you just wait till you leave with a handful of fragrant, fresh-picked sweet pea flowers and your tummy full of tea and walnut brownies made from scratch with walnuts gathered and cracked by hand. Or wait till your birthday and a dozen little old ladies send you notes, or they see you on the street in town and they press a quarter into your hand and say, you go across the street and get yourself something at the candy store while your mom's in the grocery store. So those are just a few of my memories from growing up that would not be possible had it not been for the diligence and the repetition my mom and dad and grandmother gave us in providing those experiences. So as I said earlier, the goal of my talk is just to bring awareness and inspiration, because sometimes we get into patterns and we don't realize that we're not engaging our kids and not purposefully making memories. It's so easy when there are so many things to do. But we're all here. I love the practical take-home ideas. I know that you guys probably do too. So this, I wrote out a list. It is definitely not exhaustive, but it's just something to kind of get you going a little bit. So number one, we must do the laundry, right? And make meals. So one of the things that we used to do was read out loud while I would read out loud while the children learned to fold clothes. This was very time consuming, okay? Because they were less experienced and less capable of folding. But we were teaching them, and we were able to share an escape, like to a faraway land or someplace in history, nearly every time that we were folding clothes. Or we were to go on, maybe we went on an adventure with the Boxcar Children, which was our very first laundry folding story, actually. So, our children were young. If you know that when I'm teaching them to fold the laundry, if you know that I was reading the Boxcar Children to them. Eating meals together at least once daily. That is making a memory. You might think, oh, that's no big deal. We do that. That is making an important memory. If your family meal can't be dinner, plan to make it breakfast. There are no rules. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be dinner. There's no guilt here. Just do it some other time. That's fine. Family worship time, and you all know what that is and how special that is. A morning devotional time is another kind of type of family worship. At our house every morning, what we had the kids do is they would wake up and they would kind of come staggering in, to our bedroom where we would just lift the covers up and come on and snuggle them in. We had a devotional that we used with scriptures, and then had a little short story that would complement that, and then we would read that together and pray to start out our day. So that's a really special memory that I have, and we did that for years and years and years. Creek stomping days. I already mentioned the creek stomping this summer, but creek stomping days or days in the woods exploring, no phone, it's just the best. It's the best. Pizza and game night. When our kids were little, one evening a week we would order pizzas. We would just order them and go pick them up. We didn't have a delivery situation. We lived out in the country, so it was like nobody was bringing anything to us. But thankfully, at one point, the local gas station started making pizzas, so we were like, ah! So for us, we turned it into, we called it family night, and it was always on Fridays until our kids got into high school, and then we had to actually change it to Saturday nights because after much discussion, they had so many activities going on Friday nights that, and we still wanted to keep the tradition, so we moved our pizza and game night to Saturday night. But now, these days, my husband has a specialty that the grandchildren call Grandpa's Pizza. So nearly every time that they're at our house in the evening, he involves them in making it. The older ones are now getting the opportunity to be in charge of their own pan of pizza, and they love comparing it to Grandpa's to see which tastes best. They call theirs Cousin's Pizza. They're learning all his tricks. We actually even have pizza shirts for all of the kids that we found, and it's just fun, and onesies even for the babies. It's just been fun. You just kind of have to just have fun with things. Also, special outings with grandparents, such as day trips or afternoons at the park. My daughter-in-law, her preschool was, or their son's preschool was taking them on a field trip, and she knows that I'm a yes person, so she asked, would I like to go? And I said yes. And so I got to go. I was so glad that she asked me. And so I had the opportunity to go and participate in a field trip to Harvestville Farm with him, and it was really special. And then teach your children a few games that you can consistently play together. So we're a game-playing family. We play card games and board games, and in pleasant weather and sometimes in not pleasant weather, we play yard games. My husband and I were talking about this as I was preparing for this talk, and we were remembering how nearly every single night we played a game in the yard or on the sidewalk. Sometimes it was just as simple as, playing catch. It was just you're just out there moving your body a little bit, it just winds you down somehow. You're tired, you get out there and you throw a ball, man, it just does something for you. Sometimes it was playing Foursquare, heavy duty game of Foursquare, super serious. We were like all about it, just hardcore competition. But sometimes it was Two Square on the sidewalk leading up to our back porch, which you can easily play with 2 people for an hour. Sometimes it was a game of 500. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's where you toss a ball like way high in the air, and depending on like how many bounces, depends on how many points you get, what bounce you catch it on, and so forth. Just simple stuff. All this is so simple. I mean, just go out and do it. You don't have to have any preparation. You could play croquet, which is a fairly low energy game actually. You could shoot baskets, super easy. You could play cow or pig, something like that. And I might add, this kind of playing is way more fun than jogging. It's a way better way to stay in shape than jogging, in my opinion. So it's a kind of a 2-for-1. So special family night devotional activities would be a great way to make memories. I know our kids always remember the time, usually if the husband or the grandfather could lead this, it's ideal. I just share this quick one, but our kids thought for the longest time that my parents came up with this, but it was my idea, but I gave all the stuff to them. I did all the preparation, because this is what moms do, right? You just get everything together and you give it to somebody else so that they can, do it and be part of your kids' lives too. And I wanted my parents to be able to be part of my kids' lives. So have you ever heard of this fun little devotional activity where you have a tube of toothpaste. Everybody gets a tube of toothpaste, and you just squeeze all the toothpaste out of the tube. And I mean, you have to have like a plastic tablecloth for this, okay? Because it is just a horrible mess. And then you have to try to get all the toothpaste back into the tube. I mean, it's obviously impossible. Okay, you cannot do it. It cannot be done. I mean, you try and try. It's hilarious to try. I mean, you're getting people with toothpicks and everything trying to stuff it in there. It's really funny. But anyway, it's a great fun time. And the whole concept is that, once you say something, you cannot take it back. So consider what you have to say. And then, of course, there's some scripture lesson along with that and so forth. But that was a really fun night. We took pictures. Everybody was so silly. My kids thought forever that my mom and dad planned it, but they still thought that. Okay, well, anyway, I thought I'd straighten you out on that, but okay, so another idea is car time. Reading books aloud, not you're driving, but someone in the car can read the books out loud, or you can listen to a book, an audio book. We listened to audio books on cassette back in the day. And one of those things that we listened to that we enjoyed so much was the entire Sherlock Holmes series. We've listened to so many quality books and such quality writing. That one is just a really fun one. Today I keep a search and find book in the car for the grandkids, and I am not kidding when I say that it has been there for years now, and they still enjoy it. I mean, every time. I recently added a human body book where you can lift flaps and things like that, and a word search paperback and a pen to go with that, and then a visual dictionary, I said, was coming next. These things, they stay in the car. The idea is so that they don't become boring, okay? Because if they do, and if they do become boring, just switch them out. Just get something, put something else in there so that you can make new memories, and it can give you things to talk about, and time in the car is useful and beneficial. And so, I mean, so many times our games in the car and their search book give us much to talk about. Okay, so this reminds me that when you guys came in, I handed you a little piece of paper. And that comes from this cute little game that I just got. And I found this, I think I got this at a consignment store. I think it was 25 cents or something. But it has all these fun little cars. It's called Are We There Yet? And it's in the shape of a car. I just think it's adorable. We haven't used this a whole lot yet because, like I said, I just got it. but we've used it a couple times. But on here, it just tells you like some things to look for. It's kind of like playing that game where I spy. But this one says a sign indicating a steep hill ahead. So then everybody's just looking and looking for that. And you can devise a point system if you want or whatever. I mean, we don't even do that. We're just like, let's just find it. A telephone sign. I don't know what all you have on yours, but there is a heart drawn onto one of your cards, either on the front or back of your card. And I thought, I have a little something that I wanted to give away. Who has that? Oh, yay. Okay, great. I made some cinnamon scented Play-Doh, and I just thought you might enjoy to take that home. And that was something that I had just made up, a super easy recipe. You guys probably all already know all about that kind of thing. But that's actually edible, just in case somebody decides to eat it, which is really nice because somebody usually does, it seems like. Why? It smells amazing. Yeah. And it lasts, it's been in the refrigerator for about a week. It should last a few more weeks. So just kind of keep an eye on it. If it gets too dry, just add a little bit of water and you'll be all good to go again. So a quiet day away from the house with no phones and no outside pressures is another idea. Just take a picnic blanket or a tent, set up a tent. We did this all the time. We would set up a tent out in the backyard. We would pile blankets and pillows in there. We would maybe take Legos. I don't know. Legos outside are kind of, or stuffed animals or like little figures or whatever. Maybe we would take dress-up clothes. Notebooks were always important, and books. I think I mentioned that already. And always food. We always food. And this is something I still love to do with my grandchildren to this day, and I hope it will be a memory that they'll always have of time spent with me. Playing, I mentioned about games, but I wanted to mention this one specifically. Playing massive Liverpool rummy games, which are great for inviting friends when it's too cold or too hot outside to play. You can teach your kids to learn how to play card games from a very, very early age. They can sit on your lap, you and your husband can play, older child can kind of do their thing, and then you are they're your helper. The younger child is your helper. You can, and they can put the cards out, or you can say, hey, look for put the five, and so it's great for teaching many concepts and critical thinking. Our son-in-law actually recently joked to his family that our daughter becomes Rain Man when you get her in front of a deck of cards. When I heard this, I just laughed. And I said, that's what happens when you're taught to play cards when you're 5. But they card games really pass the time, and are, like I said, they're great for critical thinking. So it's a teaching moment, Too. Building fires. I don't know if you knew this or not, but once you have caught the fire bug, it's kind of impossible to get rid of. You never can get rid of it. I caught it as a child. I love a good bonfire just about more than anything. Living on a farm, there's never a shortage of sticks. And so we'd always have these old trees dropping limbs or small sticks. And we still do. So we pick up sticks nearly every week, it seems like. And there's always wind. The Midwest, we have wind. So it's always blowing something down out of the trees. And sometimes with our fires, we would cook something over it, but a lot of times we would just make a fire, and we would maybe sit around it for 30 minutes or something, or an hour, just watching it and talking. And it's just so simple. Sometimes by the distant light of the fire, we would get a fun game of hide and seek going. You can do that with, if you have friends over, it's especially fun to have play like flashlight tag or hide and seek. And oh my goodness, you can get a really, really good game of hide and seek going when you've got a couple friends over. And then everybody just seems to become so talkative when you're sitting around a fire. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. You just learn all sorts of things. So it's a great opportunity to build memories. Church day, of course. One family we know of has made their Sabbath day extra special by turning it into a feast day. And I just think what a fun way to celebrate the Lord's Day. You could even take turns, have your kids decide each, maybe this week it's their turn to decide what special foods that you're going to have on the Lord's Day. And then a fun book series to read at bedtime. and experience together. My husband really excels at telling stories and making all the voices for the characters. It's so funny. And at the end of each chapter of our bedtime books growing up, like for instance, when we were reading the Chronicles of Narnia, he would always say, "And I'll tell you the rest tomorrow." and everyone, all of us, including me, would say, "Aw." These days, though, you will hear him telling a different kind of bedtime story. Because we don't have them over, they're not in our house every night, you know, it would be a little much to wait to hear the next chapter. So he's come up with a fun series that he calls Crocky Stories. There remains this beloved giant stuffed crocodile from the days that our own children lived at home. And now the grandchildren sleep with Crocky as he's about their size. He's pretty good sized. He's a really good snuggler, and he makes a great pillow, and he's a very sweet buddy. And so Alan tells them a story about this little crocodile named Crocky and his best friend, Mr. Skunk, who each time are on an adventure somewhere in the world, which is described for them, and they come up upon some type of creature, which little Crocky is unfamiliar, and the children must guess what this animal is. So just the smiles and the giggles that are coming out of the bedroom, it's so fun, and the wonder and curiosity that these stories bring is priceless. And it helps them to get to sleep away from home. So there's really kind of a purpose behind it. And it's just nice for them to have a sweet, fun story adventure in their little minds as they go to bed. So you might be surprised after hearing all these like activities that I am going to say this, but a video game such as, dare I say it, such as Mario Kart, something fun that everybody can play together. My husband was also the one who enjoyed this with the kids, and they usually did this only on like Friday or Saturday night. So video games didn't really like take over our lives necessarily. I mean, we might have like a spell of weather where we were, where we maybe played a little bit more often or something. But, and so this was usually a kind of a more winter activity also. But it was usually a shared experience, and I recommend that rather than an individual one, just because you want to encourage connectedness and making memories. So actually when our kids went away to college, we bought an Xbox so that Alan could continue playing games with them online to connect. And his gamer tag is still Dad, D-A-D-D, to this day. With the grandchildren, we decided we wouldn't play video games with them, so that their parents could kind of have that opportunity to utilize that as a resource in a way. In their own homes, but we do have a Connected Ventures game that we enjoy with them, and they frequently request it when the weather's not great when they're over at our house, and it's a real active game. So we're just, we're jumping, we're going, we're swimming, we're just doing all kinds of stuff. We're rafting down rivers, and we're trying to stop fish from breaking into our glass bottom boat and all sorts of things, and it's a fun memory. And we've got pictures and everything of just like people jumping up and going crazy in their pajamas and all that. And then of course, you've got your hobbies like fishing, sports, kayaking, baking, whatever it is, just whatever you enjoy doing, share that joy with your child and invite them in, and then you will make some really good memories. Just be intentional about it. And then finally, working and serving. This one is probably really obvious, but just doing serving together as a family is a really great way to build memories. Serving the community, going on mission trips as a family. I think it probably doesn't take too much explanation, but I will just as an anecdote, we'll just say that I had the opportunity to go on a mission trip to Romania along with 3 of my children, and it was a true blessing to be able to serve alongside them in a gypsy village there. And then we have seasonal activities and holidays. A seasonal activity we consistently did, which even still really makes memories for us are sledding as a family. Sometime when the weather's right in January or February, we usually have to kind of time it just right. It has to be a sunny day because you don't want to get too cold, and it has to have snow, obviously, right? So it's kind of like that perfect weather, and you can't plan it. Okay, so because of that, you really can't plan it. You can't say, like this date we're doing it. No, you just don't know. I mean, until like maybe 3 days before-ish, sometimes maybe a little bit further out, you can kind of gauge it a little bit. But so you just have to watch for it with intentionality, okay? And you have to prioritize it. So when that day comes, you're just like, and hopefully there's no wind too. That's really nice because otherwise you're just too cold. But we just drop everything, and it's like, this is the day, this is it, we're doing it, or maybe there's like 2 days we can choose between or something, and then everybody just says, okay, we're off work, we're doing it, we're going, let's go for it, and we just have such a fun time. And as the kids got older and we couldn't lose them, we did corn mazes for quite a few years. Something super simple and spontaneous that we did when our kids were young, we had several large walnut trees in our yard, which for those of you who don't have the pleasure of mowing over those every autumn, the main job of a walnut tree is to produce walnuts. Walnuts are actually pretty large. I don't know if you guys have ever seen them. Okay. Walnuts are actually pretty large. They have this hard greenish exterior, but that covers the hard walnut shell inside, which the walnut meat is inside of that even. So when the nut falls to the ground, it's still green, but slowly that really thick outer coating kind of turns black and softens up. So that stuff is what early Americans actually made ink with. So if you've never seen it, it's very dark brownish black. And these things can tend to sit around a good portion of the winter unless a squirrel decides to bury them in his winter stockpile. So we had quite a lot of these. Walnuts in our yard, having no less than 3 really beautiful old walnut trees, expansive over our yard when our children were elementary age. So my husband, being a farmer, he works outside, obviously, in the winter, so he wears full body insulated coveralls, and our children all had outdoor chores, and they would play outside, and so they had puffy snowsuits or like warm insulated coveralls of their own. And I'm not exactly sure how this began, but for years there would be a somewhat dangerous game of what we ended up calling walnut wars in our backyard. And this involved a lot of screaming and hiding behind shrubs and play equipment and trees to protect oneself from being smacked with a still slightly, and sometimes slightly hard and maybe still slightly, or maybe somewhat frozen, gooey walnut. Oh my, so just the things we encourage. I don't know how it got started, but it was obviously spontaneity. It wasn't my fault, but but oh well. As Kara says in her book, we can't be afraid of making a mess when we're making memories with our kids. And on Christmas, another seasonal time, we have begun a few fun traditions. One is making a meal together as an activity, and that is something that we do with all of most of the adults do that, and then the older kids kind of join in, and sometimes the younger kids are just picking at food or whatever. They might be playing like nearby or whatever. But each year we choose a theme or a meal, and everybody brings ingredients, and then we just put the meal together. One year we did sushi, which was great, but we decided that was an awful lot of work. So we may not do that one again for a while till the kids are a little older, since we have so many toddlers in our family right now. Another tradition that's provided some really good fun memories is having a Christmas scavenger hunt for our gifts. This has been going for only the past couple years, so we'll just kind of have to see if this one holds up. But so far it's been a lot of fun. We might use up all of our hiding places. I don't know. It's better, though, I think, than everybody just kind of sitting around and staring at each other between, eating and opening gifts. And so what we do is we divide up into teams with each of the older grandchildren. being on a team, since they know where everything is around the farm, and then we can just kind of tailor the clues to them. And that way the adults and the kids have to work together too, so it makes it really fun. And it's going to be fun this year to try and involve the 2 3-year-olds, I think, a little bit more in the clues. Last year, the winners, they found the gifts in our wheelbarrow, and it was hiding in our windbreak. So often we have a quiet activity going as well. We might have a puzzle set up on a table. There are several of us that really, we're puzzlers, so we might gather together at some point and kind of take that over. So the other thing that I wanted to mention was maybe birthdays. I don't know if you've thought about special memory making activities that you might do on birthdays, rather than just a birthday cake kind of and having the family over. Maybe take a child out for their birthday dessert, just them with mom and dad. If you could maybe have a grandparent come over and just hang out for like even 30 minutes, so that you can just take this this birthday child in to have ice cream or a piece of pie at the local diner or something like that. Man, they are never going to forget that. Some families, they do a whole entire special day with that one child alone, but for us it was much more doable and not overwhelming to commit to, and be intentional about just dessert rather than arranging an entire day off work or getting babysitters, for a longer period of time. Or you could do like a birthday breakfast tradition. Some families like do donuts only on birthdays, which makes it really fun since there's no cooking. So you choose, it doesn't have to revolve around food, but you can just make it your own and make it doable, so you can realistically accomplish it. With our grandchildren, rather than purchasing birthday gifts for 8, which now we have 9 as of this week, we have decided that we are going to do a birthday outing with each of the kids. So we've gone to plays, concerts, museums, arcades, and parks, all kinds of things. Sometimes it's a little bit longer of an activity. Sometimes it's just like an evening or an afternoon or something. This year was a little bit different for us, and we got kind of behind on the birthday outings because I had a health issue. So we did a kayak trip in September for the 3 older boys in combination around our own birthdays in September. May have been just a little bit much in some ways for my health, but anyway, it was good though, but it was good. And I know we're all going to remember our days kayaking that crystal clear blue water of the Current River in Missouri. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that. It's amazing. And I don't know how we're doing on time. How are we doing? Okay, I'm not sure what time we started, so I think we're getting close to winding up. But I wanted to mention about gardening and growing or picking your own food, because this is something that we all, food is so important to us, and many of our memories are related to food. And since we appreciate it so much in our family, we have often grown or picked our own for the best quality at the lowest price. And this has taken up a lot of our time, actually, in the summer. There's a great value to eating the food that you've worked to grow. So some activities that we've intentionally done that have made great memories have been picking blueberries at the organic blueberry farm near our home. And each year, when they were younger, we would go in the cooler hours of the summer morning, and we would hunt down blackberries alongside the raccoons. Sometimes you would look over and there would be a raccoon just picking. Making apple cider every fall has become a kind of a special tradition in our family. We've been blessed with an abundance of apples and a gift of an old cider press that somebody had gifted to my parents many years ago. And some of my very favorite memories, I'm so glad that we have a video of this actually, of my dad's laughter came from him. He would taking a gallon of that fresh cider, and he was pouring it into my little grandson's mouth, and then Alden would stomp his feet, like, whenever he wanted more, and then my dad would pour more in. It was just so funny. My dad just laughing because Alden would stomp his feet. Oh, it was so cute. Also, even just weeding the garden and working with animals brings about many a spiritual analogy too. So, and it teaches a really good work ethic. You have to wait patiently for an entire growing season to see the results of your labors or lack thereof. But usually you reap a harvest together as a result, which is a great lesson and a great reward. So I'm sure we'll talk about this some in our discussion time, but combining and multitasking is kind of key for us as homeschool parents, I think, because how do we get it all done? So if you guys would like to discuss that later on, we can maybe share some ideas about how to do that, because I think that's one of the best things about having a group of this nature, where you can just kind of bounce ideas off of each other. So in closing, a family is really God's provision for a safe place to have open dialogue and discussions consistently, to learn or copy behavior, and that means basically when the family is together, that is a teaching moment. It's to show love and to be loved, to impart values, to provide support in tough times, to learn forgiveness, and to learn about authority, which is his foundation, which is our foundation to fearing and respecting God and the Bible. When you have successfully established loving, trusting relationships that are bound together with shared memories like these that we've talked about, and thoughts and impressions of others, this lays the foundation, or to go back to the gardening, it just prepares or cultivates the soil for the planting and growing of seeds. And sometimes you're looking at your kids and you think, how long till the harvest? My husband and I farm, and we know that when the harvest is ripe, we have to get out and get in that combine, and all hands have to be on deck, and like now. And by contrast, the soil preparation, manure and fertilizer applications, the mulching, tilling, weeding, irrigation in some cases, and just the general growing season is what takes the longest. And that's where you guys are at right now. So while you're in the preparing and growing season, cultivate both everyday and special memories, fun and poignant ones, so your children will be strong, your connectedness will flourish, and their relationship with their Heavenly Father will have all the right nutrients and ingredients for whenever He waters it so that it can grow. And I'd like to close with a quote by author J.R.R. Tolkien. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. So my prayer is that your and your husband's hearts will be turned to the hearts of the children, to love them well, to have fun, and to make the most of the time. So, thanks so much. You want me to do start the discussion at all, or?
Sorry, we can for sure. I'll just let everyone know when our next gathering stuff is. Thank you, Kristin. That you did not. I've been looking so forward to this day and this talk, and that definitely did not disappoint. I feel like I got so many more tools and tips, and yeah, I love that. Reading while your kids fold the laundry. I know you've said that before, and to me, and I'm like, that's just genius. Trying to multitask. So our next get together will be on January 7th, and Shelley Furno is going to talk. And she is so sweet too. I think that's going to be a great one. I'm excited about. So yeah, and don't forget to sign up for snacks. So I appreciate it. And yeah, have a great Christmas. So.